Hey everyone, welcome back to the Millennial Investing Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Robert Leonard, and with me today, I have Andrew Gazdecki. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Robert, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. So let me start here. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Really that stems from candidly growing up poor. I was born in Detroit. I know it's kind of like a weird cliche story, but entrepreneurship kind of like saved my life in a way, I like to say. And, when you don't grow up with means, you kind of gravitate towards like hustling and building businesses because you kind of have to as like a survival mechanism. So dad passed away when I was 6, moved to a beautiful town called San Clemente when I was 5. So that also kind of amplified like what money was to me, because like I'd go over to my friends' houses and they had like these oceanfront like $1 million mansions and stuff like that. We never hung out at my house. And so that, kind of put money at the forefront for me. So that led me to start businesses very early, like eBay stores. I had a World of Warcraft website, like affiliate thing. It's kind of embarrassing to admit. I used to do this thing where I'd start a new business every summer, knowing it would fail just so I could learn. Like, how do I make a website? How do I set up Google Ads? How do I make a Photoshop design? All this stuff. And then I guess my entrepreneurial career kind of took off, however you want to define success, when I launched a job board called Phone Freelancer. Basically connected mobile developers, or specifically iPhone developers, because Android wasn't out. I saw the iPhone come out in college and I was like, that's next. This is the next internet. And so I jumped on it. And I started seeing people post jobs for really simple apps, lots of commonality in terms of the functionality. So I thought, okay, there's these do-it-yourself website builders. Why isn't there a do-it-yourself mobile app builder for small businesses? Because these people are paying like 50 grand, and what if I made like a template and like, so sold that job board for like, I think it was like 50 grand, 50 to 100 grand. I can't remember. But it definitely felt like a trillion, billion, gazillion dollars, because I was in college at the time. I went to CSU, Chico State, Harvard of the West. Yeah, Chico State, straight party school. Graduated with a 2.07. So I knew immediately I had this like system down of how to pass classes without attending, without studying. I'd make friends with the teachers. If anyone from Chico State listens to this, they'll probably be like, oh, dude, that kid. But
it's almost like if you put that much effort into the actual work, you would have passed, but instead you just put in the effort into not having to put the work in.
I had a system. So I would, day one, I'd walk up to the teacher. I'd tell them how excited I was about the class, just so they knew me. So if I ever needed a favor, they'd remember me as the nice kid that came up first day. And true story, one summer, I was working on Phone Freelancer and it started to actually make money. Like it was making like, I don't know, it's called like $5,000 a month or something like that. And I was taking a referral commission off of the jobs that I was sending to developers. And I just stopped going to my summer school class. And I straight had an F. And I explained this to the professor, and he actually gave me a C in the class. So I passed. So that was really cool.
Was it an entrepreneurship class?
No, but a funnier story on that. So I sold Phone Freelancer, and that was really the seed funding for a company called Bizness Apps, spelled BIZNESS Apps. I couldn't afford the correct spelling. But the name of the company actually, I actually haven't told this on a podcast. Like, why did you call it Bizness Apps? Like, why couldn't you think of something cooler? The initial go-to-market strategy was to cold call businesses. So I felt it'd be easier if like, hey, this is Andrew from Bizness Apps. So like you immediately know what it is. But we ended up scrapping that strategy. And we ended up buying Bizness Apps correctly spelled as a domain. Which I don't recommend spending money on domain.
How much did you spend on that domain?
That was 100,000. And then I bought bizapps.com because my mom and like everyone I knew called my company Biz Apps when I was business, and it drove me crazy. And so I had to have the domain. So I bought that one for like 75,000. But anyways, yeah, Bizness Apps was just, it started off with like really humble beginnings. My goal was to just not get a job. Like I had this goal where I was going to start 12 companies and really figure out which one's successful, because I would read a lot about angel investing, and kind of the rule of thumb was you need to invest in at least 12 different companies for you to get a return on your portfolio. So I kind of thought, okay, why don't I just kind of flip that, but do it with company building? So, okay, Bizness Apps. I'm going to make, it's going to be like an agency. I'll be able to make these apps really cheap for businesses, and I'll make like 60, 80K, and I won't have to get a job, and I can keep kind of, making new things and stuff like that. But Bizness Apps exploded, like literally a rocket ship that actually I even wrote a book about it just to share the story before I forget, because I was so young. I was straight out of college. But tying back to your question on entrepreneurship, I did take a fifth year of I went a fifth year at Chico State specifically to buy more time so I took out more student loans. I like applied for entrepreneurship classes. I would kind of troll the teachers a little bit too. I was kind of like all my teachers like loved me just because like they knew what I was doing. Like they knew I wasn't going to get a job. Like they knew I was like an entrepreneur. Like it was kind of like they were dumbfounded because we had, I think, 30,000 in recurring revenue at that point. And that was just me hustling, just basically signing up every bar, restaurant, pretty much every small business in Chico. And then the most meaningful part of that, so I got first place and I won $100, which now they give out 10,000 or something like that. So, I feel, I really kind of helped bring attention to Chico State's entrepreneurship program, because there's a lot of great entrepreneurs at Chico State, but they didn't have the resources like Stanford or some of the other companies, or not companies, universities. So that's been awesome to see. I was kind of like you can do it guy, their first case study. Anyways, so a teacher that I was in his class where I wasn't coming, and he knew this, because I'd come in and say, hey, I'm just working on my business. I'm going to fail all of your classes. And he's like, that's great. I'd give you an A if I legally could. You're actually practicing entrepreneurship. But he introduced me to an individual named Christian Friedland, who became my initial angel investor. He invested like 50, 100K, I can't remember. And he was like my mentor throughout my whole, I still talk to him today. He makes fun of me. He like says I look like Ty Lopez. Cause I used to wear glasses and then I got LASIK. And I like to read books. So it's like the double whammy of like, oh gosh, man, this guy. But just amazing individual, like incredibly smart. And so, Bizness Apps basically went from 0 to 4 million in 3 years. Eventually grew to 10 million annual recurring revenue, exited at 29. Sold to ESW Capital, which is a private equity firm. It's like a $10 billion fund. We were on Inc. Magazine's Faster Growing Companies list 2 years in a row. And this is before the iPhone had that like sign. Do you get like spam calls and you
all the time?
Yeah. So when you're on the Inc. 500 list, your phone explodes, like it breaks. Like you can't like I'm talking like 50 plus calls a day. And this is before the iPhone had the silence unknown caller feature. So I would change my number in advance, the second time in advance. But the first, I had to change my number twice. And I'd have friends that would send me like pictures of like, hey, my boss told me to like reach out to every company on the list, and here you are. Like, I'm going to call you. So that was a huge achievement. And, that was like, I never thought I'd reach something like that, especially at such a young age. And again, that really, I think, ties towards market timing, where, I just found a massive market with a massive need. And our go-to-market strategy was, we scrapped selling to businesses directly, and we moved towards a white label reseller model. So we started partnering with thousands of web agencies all across the world, because they had customers that were small businesses, because they were either managing their marketing or they made their website. And so instead of building out a gigantic sales team to push our product, we partnered with public companies, legal, whatever, any company or organization or agency that had existing relationships with small business owners. We provided a white label solution so they could take, imagine like a no code platform, and it says Robert on it, and it's, got all your branding on it. You can set your own pricing, and you kind of have a semi custom app solution. And so that's what we enabled agencies to do, because their other option was to hire mobile developers in-house, which is expensive. And if they don't have projects coming in, they're just sitting idle. So we solved like a clear pain, not just for SMBs who are just scrambling, like, how do we connect with our customers where they are on their mobile devices, but also agencies who are looking to deliver a solution like that. So it was like product market fit like I've never felt in my entire life. And it was a fantastic ride. And
why were you even enrolled in school? School's not cheap. So why were you even spending any money to go to college?
I wanted to party.
Didn't you party without being enrolled?
Put another way, I didn't have a clear plan. So actually, when I went into Chico State, I originally thought I would go into something like real estate, like I'd start my own real estate firm or something like this. This is in '06. And so the bubble burst, and I'm like, okay, that's not gonna work. And I'm thinking like, okay, who else makes a lot of money? Lawyers. I'm gonna start my own law firm. And then I get my grades back, and I'm like, okay, that's that's not going to work. So I went to, just really figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had an idea, but not a perfect picture of it. But I always say, go to college, because you learn way more outside of the classroom than you do inside the classroom. I met my wife there. Met all my best friends there. Two of the people I work with, I met at Chico State, and it was a perfect incubator for Bizness Apps. So I'm all about like the no college movement, but I think it's also kind of, one-sided when it's compared just for the financial outcome. Like, don't go to college, like go and do something yourself. Like, college is a great time to figure out who you are. Like, what do you want to be? Like, being able to like meet friends, like learn social skills. And I think that's what Chico State does best at is you're social. Like, you make friends. Like, half of my friends like are, executive sales leaders, executive marketing leaders. Some have started, billion-dollar companies. Shout out to Chris Rudegraf from Sendoso. He's a Chico State alum. So I guess, we just kind of learn people skills.
I want to go back to how much money you spent on domains, because that kind of blows my mind, because I don't think I've ever spent more than $60 on a domain. And so I want to talk about what you think about getting that perfect domain. I think you said you wouldn't do it again. So talk to us a little bit about what you think about spending a lot of money on domains today.
Good question. It depends on where you are. I think it's dumb unless you've really proven out your business. Like, if you can always start with like a .io, you can start with like a .net. I don't recommend a .net, but a .co or something like that. And then as you grow, then you can buy the actual domain. And that's kind of what happened with Bizness Apps. And we kind of bought businessapps.com with the correct spelling, like BUSINESS apps.com. Almost as like a defensive move for a brand, so someone else just didn't launch some confusing company name the same. And then, because people would go to the website and be like, it takes me to like a buy the domain page. I don't recommend it. It's a waste of money. Spend that money on something else.
Tell us a bit about your current company, which is MicroAcquire, and what your goal is with that business. That's actually how I found you. I didn't know about all these other businesses that you had until I started researching for this episode. So I want to talk quite a bit about MicroAcquire and learn more about it from you.
Yeah. So MicroAcquire started out as a simple idea of just helping entrepreneurs get acquired without any fees or commissions and without involving any middlemen. So no brokers that typically take a 10 to 15% commission, and giving an alternative option for founders looking to sell their companies. Today, MicroAcquire has morphed into probably one of the largest acquisition marketplaces in the world, if not the largest. And over the last 90 days, we've done over 40 million of acquisitions. Total revenue on the marketplace is over $1 billion. It's kind of turned into a beast of a company. And what's crazy about it as well, so again, just to kind of summarize what we do, is we help startups get acquired much more efficiently than the current options in the market today. I call it a startup cannon. You list, and basically the caliber of buyers are just very serious in terms of transacting. So it's not like a marketplace full of random people looking for blogs. It's private equity firms. It's corp dev teams at public companies. It's other venture-backed startups. It's bootstrap startups acquiring other bootstrap startups. So it's a true acquisition marketplace. It's not a buy an online business thing. Like you're buying like a real company with real valuable IP or paying customers and revenue. So it's a curated marketplace. We review every listing. We also, so if you're a founder listening to this and you wanted to list on MicroAcquire, you just need to create a profile, fill in the basic information. Then my team takes that information and basically creates a SIM, which is a short presentation, basically geared towards buyers. Like what is the revenue looking like? What is growth looking like? What is the tech stack? Who are the competitors? What is the founder's involvement? What is the founder's like LinkedIn profile so they can do all their due diligence? Basically make it really efficient. And this happens within 2 hours. So we can literally get your startup live. Maybe not 2 hours, but 4 or 5, 6. So we're doing hundreds of acquisitions. I think what's really rewarding about it is our sole purpose is to just help entrepreneurs succeed. And I think, I really fell in love with this company because I ran it for free for 10 months. It was like a side project. I just thought, this is awesome. Let's help entrepreneurs get acquired. This is badass.
Did you have that struggle when you sold your company? Is that what kind of gave you the idea? Did you pay like a huge broker fee or something like that?
Yeah. So, but I didn't pay him. So I went out to sell Bizness Apps in 2014 when I was like 26. Worked with an investment bank. Guess what their minimum fee was?
$250,000.
A little bit more.
500,000.
800,000. So they took a 4 to 5% cut. And I remember telling them, like, you guys have the sickest job in the world. I do all the work and I come in here and you make some intros. And credit to them, they did get us some offers. We had an offer at like 30 million, 20 million on secondary, meaning 20 million would go to me. Other 10 would go into the company for like a enterprise role play. We did get a soft offer from a couple other companies. You could probably guess them, like do-it-yourself website XYZ. But I wasn't ready to sell at that time. I thought I was. I thought I wanted to push for like a larger exit, and so I kept running the business. Actually moved it out of San Francisco down to San Diego to kind of retool the culture and then focus on profitability. And we still ran the business kind of at break even, but with a lot of profit in the bank. So that was kind of that idea where I thought, if there was a marketplace for me, I didn't even know brokers existed. I thought it was just investment banks and above. But brokers essentially work on the lower end of the market, and that end of the market is really, really overserved and almost taken advantage of in a sense, where again, 15% to sell a $2 million business is ridiculous. It's like a small seed round. So I thought, okay, that's silly. Let's remove that. And it's been pretty awesome to see, the response from other entrepreneurs. And it's been even more awesome seeing the model actually works where, hundreds of companies are getting acquired. Again, we see an acquisition probably every day.
Does it have to be a software company to list on the platform?
Currently, yeah. I'm a big fan of like a beachhead strategy or like a bowling pin strategy. Beachhead is basically, you want to really be narrow and focus on your initial launch. So right now we initially launched specifically focused on SaaS only. Now we've kind of gone, so that was our beachhead, SaaS, because that was my background. That's what I knew. And the bowling ball business theory is, there's two adjacent pins that really make sense to go after once you kind of feel like you've, made some ground in your current market. So now we've expanded into e-commerce, crypto companies, newsletters, marketplaces, even some agencies. We're going to be adding some more categories, lots of Shopify SaaS applications. But for now, yeah, like the blanket statement is basically startups generating, some form of revenue and have traction.
You mentioned this, but one of my favorite things about MicroAcquire is the quality, I guess you could say, of everybody involved, but more so the companies being sold, because I've used to look at, I forget if it was on Shopify or if it was another platform, but I've seen other platforms kind of like this that you could buy things, but it was just the quality of the businesses that you could buy was horrible. I was like, this listing is horrible. This founder, like quote unquote founder, side hustler has no idea what they're talking about in this description. So when I went on MicroAcquire, I was like, this quality is just to a whole nother level. And I really like that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I look at every listing. And I always joke around. I say like some people like to play tennis on the weekend. I like to play I love startups. Like I'll get nervous when I meet like a founder of like a big company. I'm like, oh my gosh, you started. Like if I met the founder of like Calendly or something like that, I'd be like, dude, can you like sign like my shirt or something like that? Like I'm just like, akin to sports. I feel I have an understanding, and I've, worked with my team on a process. So we have some criteria. But I still look at every startup and I say, yeah, that looks good. No, that does not. Like, yes, no. And I think given just, almost like an ESPN analysis of like, I think that's a good player. That's not a good player. I kind of do that with startups when we post.
It's funny you mentioned that you do this like for fun. And I know you talk about on Twitter a lot about how you have to have fun with what you're doing. And I had this realization like last week or 2 weeks ago. I have a lot of stuff going on. I'm sure you do. Everybody does, right? But usually when I did have free time, I'd almost always ride my dirt bike. That's like one of my favorite things to do in the world. And so I never really had free time, because if I had free time, I'd go ride. But then I broke my leg racing, and so I can't ride right now.
Oh,
and
man,
so
sorry.
No, it's okay. And so I had a weekend where I literally had no meetings, I had no travel, I couldn't ride my dirt bike, I had nothing. Like literally 2 days in a row, and I'm like, what do I even want to do? And the only thing I felt like doing was working on my business. I'm like, a lot of people go play video games or whatever, and I was like, I just want to sit home and work on my business. That's like all I want to do for fun.
Yeah. See, the thing with that is it's not work. You're having fun. Like, I always kind of say like, you want to get to a place where working on your startup is like your favorite video game or playing your favorite sport. Where like when you get like 30 minutes, you're rushing up and you're like, hey, I got like an idea, and it gets you excited. And I think that's so important for two reasons. One is if it's not fun, you will get burnt out. Like, don't go into building a startup if your intention is to make a bunch of money. Because it's just so you can make money in ways that are much less stressful, way lower risk. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur. You really need to enjoy it. And then the second part is if you don't enjoy it and you go into it, you're going to be competing against someone who does, and they're going to kick your ass. Like because they're going to put in an extra 20, 30%. And you could just do the math. Like where basically if you only work 8 hours a day, but you're competing against someone who loves it and they're just going all in and they're working like 14-hour days, they're doing 40% more output than you are. So, and their output is probably better because it's coming from, passion rather than just like, hey, I got to do this. This sucks. Like, they're doing the little things and they're always thinking and they're always like trying to think bigger. So, and that's just how you win in life is like, I think people who, if you find a passion, find a calling, find a purpose, and again, you spend like your whole life working, if you're blessed and you found a way to make money doing something that you love, like you won. Like you don't need to be venture backed. Like you can be bootstrapped. You can be, a public company, but if you love it, you won. Like that's some rules I live by is just, happiness over everything. Do whatever you want, but if your work, gets you up in the morning and gets you stoked, you've checkmated life.
What happens if you have 3 of those projects lined up that you want to work on? They all make you feel the same way. They all have the same potential upside. And, you talked about your beachhead strategy. You really got to focus on one thing. So how do you focus on that one thing? How do you pick which one to go with?
I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but I mean, if you were asking me that, I'd say, focus is key. It's okay to dabble and, run, small experiments and kind of like see which one picks up traction. But I think what you'll find is you'll naturally sort of gravitate towards one. Like, again, I ran MicroAcquire for free with no business model. I had no idea how to make money. Like, people would say, why don't you take commissions off listings? But you need to be like a, certified California business broker and like go through all this compliance stuff to take commissions. We've since, hired a team in-house to allow us to do those things. But I launched a business with full intentions of, I don't care if I don't make any money. Like, I don't care. Like, I just want to help entrepreneurs. And that's where I started too. I started off with, when I was thinking of my third startup, we don't need to backtrack on this, but after Bizness Apps, I started like a blockchain trading company. If you want to talk about that.
You didn't have it very long, right? Just like a year or two?
Yeah, it was kind of like a soft landing situation. But final point on MicroAcquire is the first thing I did before even thinking of the idea was I wrote down the customer I wanted to serve, because after going through 2 different startups, I knew how important it was to love the customer you serve. And so I wrote down startups and entrepreneurs, and then, started looking around the market at, solutions or problems that they were facing. And noticed no one was really addressing or innovating in acquisitions or exits. And MicroAcquire was born.
Talk to us a bit about your business model today, because you have one and it's doing well. So I want to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's really simple. We just charge buyers. We call it MicroAcquire Premium, where buyers pay an annual subscription to contact sellers. So when you go on the marketplace, every listing is private. No company information is shown, meaning the company name, how to contact the seller, any P&L or metrics that they've uploaded. All that is completely private and stored in a private data room. And then to contact the founders, you have to subscribe to MicroAcquire Premium. We review and approve your account to make sure you're not some random person, and you seem like a somewhat credible buyer. So we also not only approve every listing, we approve every buyer as well to keep the marketplace very, very high quality. It's kind of like a club where basically like you got to show us your ID to get in and stuff like that. That's a terrible analogy. My team literally they always tell me like I have the worst. Another analogy I'll say about MicroAcquire, which is also a bad one. It's like a Ferrari dealership where basically you can look at the cars, but if you're like, hey, I want to buy that car, who's the seller? I have questions about the mileage. How has the engine been maintained? What happened with this chip? You have to pay for that access, and then you send a request to the seller. seller receives it, and then they can review the buyer's LinkedIn profile, send chats, back and forth, have them sign an NDA if they choose, and then they grant them access into their data room. So that's our business model now. We're at about 900,000 in annual recurring revenue. We'll probably hit $1 million this month. And then we're going to start moving into, we're releasing an M&A directory where as we start to work with these larger businesses, we're going to start working with brokers. We're going to start working with investment bankers. We're going to start working with M&A advisors and accountants and attorneys and wealth managers and due diligence experts, really consolidating the whole M&A marketplace, kind of like Zillow for M&A, where we address everything from valuations to escrow to advisory to financing. So you can basically, we want to make it extremely easy for founders to get acquired. And it's really important to note, we're building this for founders. We're not building this for buyers. Buyers will go through like a Ninja Warrior course to get to the best deals. And so we want to basically empower founders to have an edge at the table with buyers. Because with a lot of buyers, it's Tuesday for them. But for the founder, it's like the most life-changing event ever. So we want to empower them, educate them. And so the thought behind the advisory directory is some founders have these businesses where maybe they could use some help from a broker, or maybe they can use some help from an investment banker, or maybe they just need some guidance in terms of how to legally close the acquisition properly. And so we'll have a full directory of fully vetted individuals that can do that, but at a much lower rate. So they'll help increase the value of your startup. And then you pay less because typically these individuals spend half their time on sales and marketing, just like any other business. And we have thousands of startups that we can drive business to and then allow them to drive down the price because they're not having to basically, spend money on sales and marketing like they currently do. So think of like Upwork or like Yelp with like ratings and reviews. You can hire these people, have an agreement in place on scope of work and all that fun stuff.
Another thing you're doing, and it's been interesting to follow on Twitter, is this debate with TechCrunch, I guess you could say, and this idea of how much news coverage VC-backed companies get versus bootstrap companies. Talk to us a bit about what you're doing to help provide coverage to bootstrap companies and why it's even needed.
Yeah, I think, bootstrap companies are a very underserved and underrecognized segment of the startup ecosystem. Plain and simple. And then
why is that?
I don't know. Like for reference, Bizness Apps with Bootstrap, but we were covered in, tons of major media. We were in TechCrunch like 12 times. We were in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, VentureBeat. We were everywhere. And I think there's just been a shift in media towards just this, fundraising cycle that I just kind of called out. I just said, hey, this is getting a little, guys. Because I've previously written for TechCrunch. I've been reading that blog for the past decade. Nothing but love for them. I just started providing them some feedback. And others seem to agree. And so with that, I didn't get a response back. And instead of continuing to complain, I just said, hey, I'll just do it myself. Because I want to read these stories. And that's what we're doing. And what we want to do is we want to, motivate and inspire and, really show entrepreneurs what's possible. When you read an article about like a company raising 200 million, that doesn't do anything for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like an article related to like Tom Brady throws like a 99-yard touchdown. It's like, I can't do that. Maybe that's not the best analogy again. Bad analogy.
We need to get Sean Perry on the show from My First Million that we talked about before. He's great with analogies.
Yeah, he'd probably have a better one there. But if I'm just starting out as an entrepreneur, that doesn't help me. I want to learn how did you get started? How hard was it? What was the stuff I can relate to. My intention with TechCrunch was just to bring awareness, hey guys, it's getting a little old. And then it just kind of blew up. I saw over, at this point, 10 million impressions, 4,000 likes, 500 retweets. My inbox has been exploding with yeah, we agree. And it bums me out in a way because it's almost there's these gatekeepers in the small Silicon Valley bubble where people are too afraid to speak up, like, oh, don't talk back to TechCrunch, like they may not cover you again. If you have an opinion, this is entrepreneurship. Speak your mind. Like, that might sound a little aggressive, but I'm a competitive person, and when I think that I see something that is unfair to others in the market, I speak my mind. And then if change doesn't happen that way, I take action and do something about it. So I've launched a publication, Bootstrappers. We're no TechCrunch. Like we don't have like a decade of experience, but we're taking a real shot. I hired 4 writers. I have a terrific head of content. We have about over 200 startups in the queue. So we're starting to realize like, okay, like, there's a lot of interest here, and we're just looking to inspire, motivate, basically bring attention and recognition to entrepreneurs taking an alternative path than the typical VC route. Basically just writing the blog that I think the startup community deserves. And I think there's a lot of people that would agree with that.
You mentioned that you didn't have a business model or monetization strategy for MicroAcquire for 10 months. So you might not have one yet for Bootstrapper, but what is your plan?
None.
How do you plan to monetize it?
None. I don't, and I won't. It's completely free. It's literally my gift to the startup community. Like this sounds like kind of cheesy, but I just want entrepreneurs to win. If you're venture backed, bootstrapped, if you're public, if you're on Mars, whatever you're doing, like I just want you to win. I want all entrepreneurs to win. And so, when it's all said and done with MicroAcquire, I just want to be known as someone who really helped, push entrepreneurs forward in terms of, shining light on alternative ways to build companies. Like I bootstrapped business to a fantastic exit. Like that wasn't celebrated, but I'm pretty happy with it. But you read about like these dumb Acqui-hires, and then what happens there is like the title should read, like most funding rounds should read, hey, founder sells, 30% of his company to XYZ firm, and it's celebrated. It's like celebrating the cost of a wedding. And then in terms of, Acqui-hires and stuff getting covered, that's literally like, hey, startup didn't work out, they all got jobs. And it's all celebrated. And again, I guess it should be celebrated in a way. I don't want that to be taken out of context. But I think what that does is it just creates this like weird stigma in Silicon Valley where founders begin to feel like, building $1 billion business, like getting acquired by like this huge company is how you succeed as an entrepreneur. And that's not the truth. And that's not the reality for 99% of entrepreneurs. And, just hoping to, shed some light and just inspire entrepreneurs that, again, you don't have to like go down that path. There's another path.
For those who don't know, what is an Acqui-hire?
That would be when a company acquires a company for the team. So you have a stellar team. Typically it's, when things aren't working out. Not all the time. Sometimes they'll use the IP, but usually they completely scrap the IP. So whatever you're working on, like a recent acquisition on MicroAcquire, it literally was company raised $12 million, acquired by LinkedIn, sold the IP for $250,000. So they basically all got jobs, and it was like a COVID situation. I felt really, empathetic to the founders. So I talked to him and I tried to give him dude, some things like you just can't control. And that's another piece of advice I would give randomly is write down all the things you can control, and then write down the things you can't control, and throw away the second list and just focus on things you can control. But that's an Acqui-hire. They basically join a larger company, and then whatever they were working on gets usually thrown away.
I mentioned that I found you from MicroAcquire, but one of the reasons why I stuck around to really follow you is because of your philosophy that not every business has to be $1 billion company. And I've talked about that for a long time, and I've felt it myself for even longer. And I've talked about it on this podcast because I think people, if you go into a business and you feel pressure to have to build it to $1 billion business in order to be successful, sometimes you might make decisions that aren't in the best interest of the business, and you actually end up failing because of that. Where I believe instead, if you realize that a $1 to $10 million business is still massively successful and can change your life, you can make different decisions. You don't have to worry about trying to get to $1 billion. And I think you have a higher chance of success.
I would completely agree with that. I always say, go down the path of like these three businesses. Like start something small first for experience and to learn. Like, trust me, like the amount that you can learn by just launching something simple as a cash flowing agency or a blog is enormous. Maybe it doesn't take off, maybe it does, but you'll learn a ton. And then business number two, I recommend starting a bootstrap SaaS or e-commerce company, something that you can sell to make you financially secure. And then on your third company, that's your chance. Like you're financially secure, change the market, disrupt something huge. Like, dude, like go, reinvent the airplane, whatever your thing is. Like, that's my philosophy, and I'm on company number 3, and that's what I'm currently doing. I'm trying to essentially disrupt investment banking and ideally help mint, tens of thousands of millionaires through MicroAcquire.
I'm only one person, but you've said multiple times that you want to inspire people, and I can say that you've inspired me. Specifically with one example is started going on the platform. I started seeing these micro SaaS companies that were selling, and it's not life-changing money, but it's these small micro SaaS companies that are, like you said, it fit into that number 1 or number 2 company you mentioned. And I'm like, I've always wanted to learn how to program. I've always wanted to learn how to code, but I've never had really, 1, I never had time, and 2, I never really had an incentive to do it. I just wanted to do it. Now, because of this, I'm inspired to start my own micro SaaS eventually at some point. And so it's like kind of encouraged me and inspired me to learn to code so that I can eventually list the company on here if I don't buy one on here first.
Yeah, and I hear that all the time, and I love it. It's like, it's almost like insurance policy. So if you build something and it doesn't really take off, but you get it to like 10, 20,000 in revenue, who will buy that like fast, because they'll see it as, an opportunity to scale it, but you learned and you recouped all your costs. Like, you didn't, because there's so many stories of founders like building companies and, spending money and not recouping it or just getting over it and then letting it die on its own. And so, those aren't like, the ideal companies that like, actually, no, those are up there with my favorite, but that would be, a good conversation around like the two sides of MicroAcquire. There's ones looking for $1 million businesses and tons looking for like those smaller, funner opportunities. And then it's a win for the founder as well, because they get to celebrate. They got acquired. Like that's an accomplishment. Like who cares if it's 10K, 20K, 50K, 100K or 10 million? Like you sold a business. Congrats, man. Put that on your resume.
You've chosen to build MicroAcquire in public. What does it mean to build in public, and why did you decide to go down that route?
Honestly, one day I was like, hey, here's my revenue. That was it. There was no strategy. There was no thought. I don't overthink things. Like when we launched, did you see the Bootstrappers launch on Tuesday? You want to know how that went down?
I saw 1 million people retweet it. I saw your feed filled with tons of people talking about it.
The day before the launch, I had a one-on-one with my head of content, and we were supposed to launch on September 7th, but I meant to write September 2nd in the tweet. And I was like, oh, well, you guys got more time now. And then I had a meeting with Chris, who's an absolutely incredibly talented storyteller. I said, the blog looks great. We have, 8 articles. We have like 10 in the queue. Let's just launch this thing. And I called my VP of engineering. We rehooked the domain, bootstrappers.com. Quickly created a page on Product Hunt. That's how we launched it. Like literally 7 p.m. I was like, this looks good. Let's go. Let's launch it tomorrow.
And so are you a person that's not necessarily focused on perfection? You're more worried about progress than perfection? Because for me, I'm such a perfectionist, and I know it's a flaw that I have, but I get in my way of my own self because I just want everything to be perfect before I release it.
Well, I think you learn more when you ship quicker. Like we got good feedback on like it looked weird on some like browsers. We already fixed that. Feedback on the stories. But I always say, good today is better than perfect tomorrow. I live by that. And so that was an opportunity for me to also show the team, like, I don't just say it, like, I'm serious. Let's launch it. Let's go. I think speed of execution is what wins markets. When you check MicroAcquire in 90 days, I'll promise you, it'll be a completely different company. We got some big things in the pipeline that I'm extremely excited about. And it's all a team effort. I can't really take credit for much of it at this point. Because I have an amazing team. We added like 100 or actually like 1,000 horsepower to the company over the last 3 months, and we're having a ton of fun. That's another thing I always recommend to founders is have fun with your team. Like, figure out what motivates them, like make it enjoyable. And that's how you can really, really, do something really, really special with a great group of people and then have a great time too.
Before we give a handoff to where people can find you, I like to wrap up the show by letting the guest ask me a question. So what question do you have for me?
You like to do for fun?
Race motocross.
Nice. That's always my businesses. That's always my first interview question. People are always surprised. I always, when I hire, I look for motivation, attitude, and skill set in that order. If I don't feel you're motivated, I don't feel you have a good attitude, and I just can't like vibe with you, laugh with you, it won't work on either side. So I usually like to dive in and get to know you as a person rather than how good you are at podcasting or how good you are at, marketing or whatever your skill set may be. So motocross, I dig that. I'd hire you.
A lot of times skills can be taught, right? Those first two things that you talk about, motivation, you can't teach that. And
can't teach that. Again,
and just whether you enjoy like talking to somebody, you can't teach that. So it's like
going back, dude, Michael Jordan, Jerry Rice, Tom Brady, like what made them great was their motivation. Like they obviously had the skill set, but there's countless examples of athletes with, the same level of skill set and athletic ability without the motivation. It's the motivation. Motivation is what makes people great, in my opinion. You can learn everything. And that's really the number one skill of any entrepreneur is being able to teach yourself anything.
If you're motivated enough, you can learn the skills, right? So I totally understand and agree. I know people are going to enjoy this conversation, going to want to check out what you're doing. Where's the best place to find you?
Probably Twitter. As you can probably see, I'm pretty active. Follow me if you want to hear about, stuff about how to build companies, how to have fun, with your team, learn about other companies bootstrapping their way to success. That's kind of my jam. And then, check out MicroAcquire. If you're looking to, buy or sell a business, there might be something for you there.
I will put links to all those different resources in the show notes for you guys to go check out. And maybe you'll see one of my little micro SaaS companies on MicroAcquire someday, or maybe on a future episode, I'll be telling you guys a story about how I bought a company from the MicroAcquire marketplace. So, all right, guys, go check out Andrew. Andrew, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure, man. Dude, thanks so much for having me on this. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next podcast episode and new investing resources. What are your takeaways and thoughts about this discussion? Let us know in the comments section below.